Do you budget your money? Are you saving for anything special? How do you manage your money? You'll learn some personal finance vocabulary on this week's episode of
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching English between us, Reza and I are going to help you improve your English and take your vocabulary, your grammar, your pronunciation, every aspect of your English up to the next level. How are you, Reza?
I'm very well. I'm just looking through the window of Craig's flat, enjoying the sight of sailing boats out in the bay beside Valencia port. It's lovely.
Of course, instead of walking on the beach or sailing around the sea in the Mediterranean, Reza and I are stuck in the flat podcasting, which we love. So it's out of choice. Trust me, it's out of choice. If you're a new listener to the podcast, you're very, very welcome. And if you are a regular listener of the show, welcome back. What's first this week, Reza?
Let's get started with an audio message from SpeakPipe from Thayane. I think that's pronounced, or it could be Tayane from Brazil.
Hi Reza, I'm Craig. I'm Tayane from Brazil. I was born in Bahia, but now I'm living in Rio de Janeiro, and next year I will move to Spain. I'm going to apply for a master's degree in Barcelona that is spoken English. So that I have to take a proficiency test that in my case will be TOEFL. I would like to thank you guys to help me so much to improve my listening and to give so much words that I didn't know. Thank you to help me to improve my vocabulary. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wow, Barcelona, you're coming to live in Spain and I think you will absolutely love Barcelona. It's one of my favorite cities. So I'm very excited for you that you're coming over here to study. And good luck with the TOEFL test. Reza, can we help her with the TOEFL exam?
Yes, I think we can. Thayane. Now I know how to pronounce your name. Thayane, very nice name. Thanks for your message. If you look at episode 68, so go to inglespodcast.com/68. On that episode, we talk about the TOEFL exam as well as the IELTS exam. TOEFL is a more American version of IELTS. That's the exam that Thayane is going to do. So episode 68 might give you some help to start with your preparation for the TOEFL.
And before we continue, we'd like to thank our sponsor, italki. Now, if you're like Thayane and you're about to take an exam that's very important for you because you need a good score or you need to pass it, you need the qualification, then we would suggest you try our sponsor, italki. What is italki? It's a website that works as kind of a marketplace where students can meet teachers and you find the good fit for you. So in the case that you're preparing for an exam, you would find a teacher that specializes in the exam you're going to take. On the italki website, you have a list of the teacher's qualifications, their experience. There's very often an introductory video, so you can kind of see and get to know the teacher a little bit even before you pay for your lesson. And these personal one-to-one classes really do prepare you well and take your English to where you want to go. Now, this lesson is about personal finance. Of course, you can find a teacher who would help you with the vocabulary of personal finance. So you can tell your teacher on italki exactly what area, what vocabulary, what part of English you want to study. So we do recommend you try this service, and if you do try it through our link on the website, italki will give you a $10 credit when you pay for your first lesson, and that will help you to get started with your classes. For more information, go to the show notes for this episode. That's inglespodcast.com/297 and click on the link that will take you to the italki page. Reza and I would like to thank italki very much for sponsoring Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Okay, Craig, let's move on. We've got another audio message, also from South America. This one is from Argentina, and it's Federico, a self-confessed AIRCaholic, an AIRC, Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig, Caholic.
So he's not an alcoholic, he's an aircaholic. He likes this podcast.
Yeah, whether he likes a drink or not, I don't know.
Let's listen to Federico.
Hi, Reza and Craig. I'm Federico from Mendoza, Argentina. I listen in your podcast for 2 months, and I became a really alcoholic. And I'd like to listen you speaking about saving money. I have a specific debt in the word alcancía. I know that in the UK they said money box, and in the USA they speak piggy bank. So what's the difference? And well, if you could speak about this area of personal finances, it will be great. So bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Federico, for your message. And we really appreciate people who take the time to send us a voice message. We love getting to know you a little and hearing your voice. So thank you for your message and for your idea for this podcast.
Thanks, Federico. Very nice message and a very interesting idea. Just before we get on to the idea, though, Craig, I did notice one or two things that could maybe be improved in Federico's message. Did you notice anything?
Yeah, there was something at the beginning with using the present perfect continuous. I can't remember exactly what Federico said, but he should have said, I've been listening to your podcast for 5 months, for 6 months. So use the present perfect continuous, Federico, because you're speaking about from the past until now. And you're telling us how long you have listened for. And because the focus is on the activity of listening, use the continuous. So I've been listening for 6 months. I've been working for 2 years. I've been studying for 9 months.
Yeah, it was the word been he left out. He said, I've listening. Mm-hmm. He forgot been. Yeah.
Did you hear anything else that might improve the message?
Yes. Also, you about the verb listen. You said listen you, but you need to add the preposition listen to you. You listen to someone or something. Also, you said you had a doubt in a word, but you have a doubt about something. A doubt, D-O-U-B-T, about a word.
Any other points, Reza?
Yes, although I understood you perfectly, but let's get our grammar perfectly correct. You got a second conditional slightly wrong. Second conditional is when you imagine things or you talk about things which are possibilities in the future. You said if you could speak about personal finance, it will be great. The word will is wrong. We need to use would. Would is for imagination, speculation, hypothesis. So if you could speak about personal finances, it would be great. Not will, but would is the correct second conditional verb.
And we're going to do exactly that. We have spoken about finance in general back in episode 252. We spoke about international business. Go back to inglespodcast.com/252. And also in episode 117, the economy and trends, las tendencias. So that's inglespodcast.com/117. But those two episodes speak about the idea of finance and money in very general terms. We'd like to focus this episode more on personal finance, personal income, and how you manage and budget your money.
Federico, you had a specific question about the word alcancía. I must admit, I had never heard that word before.
Here in Spain, they tend to say una hucha, don't they?
Yes, that's the word I know. How might you say that in English, Craig?
Well, Federico is right when he says piggy bank. That's pig, P-I-G, piggy piggy bank, but that's more for a child. I don't think adults would use that word. I had a piggy bank when I was very young to save my pennies and to save my coins. It was in the shape of a pig, and there was a hole, a slot, S-L-O-T, a long hole, a narrow hole at the top of the piggy bank, and you put your coins and your pennies in there. But money box, I would say, is more used for adults.
Yes. And also money box might not be for your personal use. It might also be in an office. You might find a money box. What do you call the money that people put in a money box in an office, Craig, for things they're going to share? For example, imagine everybody puts money in the money box for coffee and biscuits in an office.
Well, if the money comes from the workers, from the employees, I would call that a kitty, to put money in the kitty. Now, as English teachers, obviously we have a teacher's room where we teach at our school, and every month we put money in the kitty. That's not a cat, a small cat. That's a box where everybody contributes their money, Kitty, and that money is for tea, coffee, biscuits, etc. So put money in the kitty when you're collecting it. But there's money that companies sometimes have in cash for small expenses. What's that called?
Yeah, so it might not be a kitty for drinks. It might be for taxis, for paying workers who come to the office to fix things, that type of thing.
And it comes from the company, not from the workers.
Exactly. So it's company money, not voluntary money from paid by each employee. That money is called petty cash. That's P-E-T-T-Y, petty cash. So money in cash that the company reserves for unexpected or small payments.
And the word petty kind of means things that are insignificant, not big things, just small little things that are not very important. Petty. There's another kind of box that you would find in a church or a place of worship, for example, and that's called a collection box. So people pass a collection box and you donate. You make a donation to the church or to the cause or the reason that the money is being collected for. So that kind of box is a collection box, also a collection of money.
Yes, it can be very embarrassing, can't it, when the collection box comes your way in a church, but you haven't got anything to put in there. Have you ever been in that position, Craig?
No, because I don't usually go to church.
I don't go much myself these days, but when I was younger, I did, and I felt embarrassed when I had nothing to put in there, but what can you do?
You take some out.
Yeah, you could, yeah.
No, that's a joke. Of course you wouldn't take anything out.
I suppose you could, if you only had like a £10, but you didn't want to give that much.
Take some change.
Could you take some change? Would you do that?
I think I might be too embarrassed. So maybe I'd put an IOU in there, a piece of paper. IOU, £2.
Or what about a check? A personal check?
Do people use checks these days?
Not many. I think I have a checkbook, but I haven't used it in about 2 years.
I think checks are still used in the US. I hear on North American-based podcasts, people speaking about writing checks for people. I think it's more common in the US than it is in Europe. Another thing that's very American-focused is a 401k, which I hear a lot on finance podcasts out of the US. And we don't use this in Europe, but the 401k is a savings plan for retirement. So we're going to speak about saving money for retirement later. Just know that if you hear 401k, I didn't know what that meant for a long time, and I checked, and it's an agreement that the company has with its employees to contribute, to give money to the employees' pension fund.
You mentioned the word savings. What are savings?
Money that you save. Money that you put in one place for later. So you don't spend it, you keep it for use later on.
I think in the introduction, Craig, you talked about budgets. You said, do you budget your money? So to budget something means to plan how the money is spent. All government plans should have a budget. It can be a noun or a verb. But also, as regards personal finance, it's a good idea to budget, to work out how much each aspect of your personal life is going to cost, and set aside or budget money for each thing.
So it can be a verb and a noun, to budget and to have a budget or to create a budget. And we've spoken quite a lot recently about doing up your flat that you've done recently, and I'm sure you had a budget for the work you did on your flat. So you needed to budget for your flat.
Exactly. There was a certain amount of money I could spend and no more than that. That was my budget. And also I had different budgets for each aspect. I was prepared to pay a certain amount for the electricity. So there was the budget for the electricity, a certain amount for the painting, etc. So each thing was budgeted.
And you said you went over budget, so you spent more money than you'd anticipated, but not too much. So it was just a little over budget.
Yes, indeed. Even the greatest of authorities, like most governments, tend to go over budget in everything. Nobody ever takes seriously the original budgets. When they say, yeah, we're going to build a bridge over the river and it's going to cost 20 million euros, people are already thinking, okay, it's probably going to be 30 million euros. Everybody knows they always go over budget.
Yeah, of course, the opposite is to bring something in under budget, but you don't hear that very often. That's not so common. Another quite common expression is disposable income. Now, maybe you've heard about disposable pens, disposable razors that you shave with.
I thought for a minute there you were going to say disposable razors.
No, I'm not throwing you away. I wouldn't throw you away.
Disposable.
Razor is indisposable. We can't do this without razor. No, a razor is something you shave with. So they are sometimes disposable because they're made of plastic and they're very cheap. So obviously, if you have disposable income, that is the money that remains or left over after you've spent the money on necessary things like rent, food, transport, etc. Disposable income. What remains after you've spent the necessities.
So you might first work out your household budget. Household means concerning the house, the home. So how much you're going to need for the rent, the food, etc. That's your household budget. Then whatever's left, that's your disposable income. Another useful expression is personal expenses. Now, expenses means money for small things, well, in theory, small things, such as if I work for a company and they send me away for a day, they might pay me expenses for my lunch, for example, because I'm going to need to eat when they send me out of the office. So it's not my fault I have to go away. So they might give me some money for personal expenses for my lunch, for example. But they're not going to give me money to go to a betting shop, and bet on horses in a race. No, only for essential things, for personal expenses. In theory, although there have been so many scandals recently in Spain and other countries that you wonder if that's true. But in theory, it's for essential personal things.
If you do have money remaining, or let's use the phrasal verb left over, which is more common, if you have money left over after your expenses, you can save it. And there's an expression in British English to save money for a rainy day. I don't know why that's typically British, because rainy days happen very often in the UK. But if you save for a rainy day, that means you keep the money for something special in the future. To save for a rainy day.
Yeah, you could say you're putting it away. You're putting the money away. You're saving it for that rainy day. If you put money away into a bank account, there's a good chance that you might earn interest on that money.
Not these days so much.
Actually, not much. You're right. It has to be a lot of money.
Do you remember years ago when you got a good rate of interest, a good percentage of your money in interest from the bank in a savings account. That doesn't happen so much now.
Yeah, they'll only pay a little bit of interest on a lot of money. Yeah, you have to give them a lot and they won't give you much in return. In fact, many people think that the days of free banking are numbered, that very soon we'll all have to pay them just to avail of their services.
To avail of their services.
Yeah. Avail means to have something at your disposition. So already some banks, I can think of some in Spain, not so many in the UK perhaps, but some big banks in Spain charge a monthly fee just to be able to use their services. So you've got money in their bank, they're using your money, and you've got to pay them to be able to use services such as being able to write a check, which you probably don't want to, but transfer money, you might want to, that type of thing, use their cash machine. You have to pay some banks already for that.
The days are numbered, the days are limited. If you have interest that builds on itself, which means it increases gradually, exponentially, it's called compound interest. So it's earning money and then earning money on the interest, which means it's increasing and increasing and increasing gradually over time. That's called compound interest. Remember, if you want to see these words written, go to the show notes at inglespodcast.com/297.
If you've got quite a bit of money saved, you might like to invest in stocks and shares. So you might be interested in the stock market. I always get this wrong now. Is it el bolso or la bolsa? It's la bolsa, isn't
La bolsa.
it? The stock market is la bolsa. So if you have quite a lot of money saved, you might like to invest in the stock market.
Especially if you're a rich English teacher.
Yes, which we are not.
Which is an oxymoron,
Yeah.
like an honest politician.
There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. So you might buy stocks and shares. We can absolutely guarantee you that inglespodcast.com does not exist in the stock market. It is not a limited company in the stock market. Now, but big companies such as Facebook, Google, etc., they sell little bits of themselves. So you can buy stocks or shares in big companies.
So stocks and shares are acciones in Spanish. And where do you buy and sell these stocks and shares? Well, on the stock market, la bolsa. You could also invest your money in property or real estate. Do you think that's a good place to invest your money?
Better than the stock market, in my opinion.
Why? Doesn't the price of property rise and fall?
Not half as much as the stock market.
So it's more stable. It's a more stable investment.
Yeah, it sometimes goes down, but far more often goes up. I mean, there are no properties anywhere in the world, I think, today that are worth less than 40 years ago. Virtually impossible. It's true there are some properties worth less now than perhaps 10 years ago. Yeah, like in London, for example, and in Spain, there are, but not 40 years ago.
So let me ask you this question, and I'm going to use the second conditional because it's hypothetical. If you had a lot of money saved, would you invest it in the stock market or would you buy property?
Property. I don't have to think more than a quarter of a second to answer you. What about you?
You've obviously thought about it. I would probably invest it in the stock market because it seems easier to access the money and less of a headache, because buying property involves lawyers, negotiations, maybe renting it after, and that for me is a lot of time and a lot of work. It just seems easier to invest it in stocks and shares, but I have no idea what would be best.
I think you're quite right. Far easier to access it and far easier to lose it as well. That's the only thing.
I wonder what Federico thinks if he works in finance. I wonder what his opinion is.
The number of people who've lost money because it was invested in things like pension funds, which we mentioned earlier. Very often pension funds seem to go bust, bancarrota. And if your money was invested in that, goodbye money.
Yeah.
If the company ceased to exist, your money's disappeared. But if you own a house, it's not going to cease to exist. Yeah, it's a pain in the neck to look for lawyers and people like that to sell it, but the house is still there. You know what I mean? That's why I would prefer property.
It's also more tangible. It's more physical. You can see what you've got for your money. Whereas if you invest it, it's on the internet in ones and zeros.
Would you ever invest in Bitcoins?
I wish I had when I first heard about them. I would be very rich if I had. And I heard about them at the beginning listening to a tech podcast. But these days, probably not. I think the time has passed for that. So, speaking more about personal finance, you can go to the bank if you have some spare cash and pay money in. The phrasal verb to pay in means to put your money in the bank. You could also say to deposit. Use deposit as a verb or use deposit as a noun. So the collocation is to make a deposit. Yesterday, I went to the bank, I made a deposit. What's the opposite, Reza?
The opposite of that is to make a withdrawal. So withdrawal is a noun, and that has the phrasal verb to draw money out, or more formally, withdraw. Or there's another phrasal verb to simply take it out, to take money out of the bank.
And whether you're paying money in or taking it out, you probably interact with a machine to do it these days, and that machine in the wall outside the bank is called a cash point or a cash dispenser, or in American English, ATM, which stands for automatic telling machine. So ATM in the States and cash point or cash dispenser in the UK. And sometimes there's a more colloquial term, a more slang term, the hole in the wall. I'm going to the hole in the wall to get some money.
If you don't need cash, if you need to move money around, but you don't need actual cash, efectivo, you might make a transfer, or the verb, you might transfer money. That means to change it from one account to another account. So it could be, if you have two accounts, you might transfer it from one of your accounts to another. Or if you're trying to pay someone, you might transfer it from your account to their account.
Now, as a teacher, I've never really been very rich. I've never had any spare extra money to invest in the stock market or buy some property. I can say I've never had money to burn. If you have money to burn, you can spend it without thinking. You can spend it carelessly. You can spend it for fun. I've never really had extra cash, extra money to burn. Have you?
No. I think we've always been able to make ends meet, though, haven't we?
What does that mean, to make ends meet?
It means you don't have money to burn, but you do have enough, just, not too much, but you've got enough to get by. That means survive. Make ends meet, get by, you survive. You're not going to die of hunger, but you haven't got a lot either.
So these days, yeah, I can make ends meet, I can get by, although I don't have money to burn. But years ago, when I first started teaching, money was very, very tight. I did not have extra money, and I lived from hand to mouth. That idea of living from hand to mouth means just living from month to month on your paycheck, on the money you get when you get paid. So there was very, very little left over, actually nothing left over. I lived from hand to mouth.
Have you ever had to borrow money?
I borrowed some money from my dad for my first car when I was 17 or 18. So he lent me the money for my first car, and then I paid him back every month. But that's the only time, I think. Obviously, the odd maybe 50 euros or 100 euros from a friend, but not money from a bank. I didn't get a loan or anything like that. Have you?
No, except that loan which many people get, whether they like it or not, to buy a house. But there's a special word for that, a mortgage. We'll maybe talk more about that in another episode, but a mortgage is a hipoteca. So that's a special type of loan. But I've never had a personal loan, no.
Me neither. Have you ever been overdrawn at the bank. To be overdrawn is where you go into the red. So you take out more money than you have in your current account.
I had an overdraft on many occasions when I was a student. I overdrew. Most students in the UK overdraw. That means they have a bank account, but they're students. They don't have much money and they don't usually have enough work to make much money. And so you spend more than you have. Temporarily, not permanently. Then you get your grant, la beca, or money from your parents, and you're able to pay off the overdraft. To pay off means when you were in the red and now you're not in the red.
Many students have to scrimp and save. That collocation of those two words together is very common, a very strong collocation. To scrimp, S-C-R-I-M-P, to scrimp and save. Many students really have to watch the pennies, scrimp and save, buy as cheaply as they can and live as cheaply as they can on a grant, una beca, or on very, very low income.
Yes, you could say that they have to tighten their belt. Tighten your belt, which goes around your waist, the cinturón. So to tighten that, make it a bit tighter, a bit closer to your body, because you'll be eating less and you'll be getting thinner. So you're going to have to tighten the belt. So it's a metaphor for spending less.
Speaking of income and expenses, I'd like to speak a little about tracking your money, following how much money you spend every month and how much money you earn or is incoming, your income every month. Because this is something I've never really done. I've never watched very closely the difference between my expenditure and my income. So what I've decided to do this year is to track my money. And I recently found on an internet site a very useful spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, that makes it very easy to budget on a monthly basis. I'll link to the spreadsheet in the show notes if you're interested. That's inglespodcast.com/297. Perhaps Federico would like to look at it. And I'll be using this during the year to track my expenses. Do you do this, Reza?
No, but you've given me an idea. I might do that. I might start to do it because it's something which, because I'm a bit short of money. To be short of money means I could do. It would be nice if I had a bit more. I could do with a bit more. I might start doing it. I might start tracking it. I tell you what I definitely wouldn't do though, and maybe some of you do it. I don't know, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't get an app to do it. Forget that. I would do it on an Excel sheet.
Is that because they link to your bank account?
Of course they will. Or simply know everything you buy and bombard you with ads for the rest of your life and sell the information on to loads of people. Why would I give all that information free to somebody? So yes, I would use an Excel sheet, but an app? No way.
I know there's a very popular one called Mint, M-I-N-T, and as far as I know, it's quite secure. It does link to your bank account, but it has heavy encryption, and I do internet banking, so I use the internet for bank transfers and for checking my account. So why not link to an app that's encrypted if you trust it?
I think it's completely safe. I don't think there's very little chance of you being robbed because of that app. The bit I don't like is I've just told Mint absolutely everything I spend my money on for free, and they're going to tell other people, but not for free. And those other people are going to bombard me with ads. Why would I want that?
I see your point. Quite an interesting exercise is to look at a list of possible expenditure reasons and allocate a percentage to each one just to see where you think your money is going and maybe where you would like to spend more money and where you would like to spend less money. So let's do this exercise, Reza. I'll throw something at you, not literally. I'm not going to throw anything at you literally, but I'm going to throw a word at you and tell me the percentage of your income that you think you spend on this, and I'll tell you mine. So clothes, I think I spend probably 5% or actually less on clothes?
For me, I'd say about 1%. I mean, there are often years that go by when I buy no clothes. Years. Not months, but years. I buy no clothes. So not much.
So that's an area that you're quite comfortable with.
Yeah. I look terrible, but I'm
Well,
comfortable
you're
with it.
wearing a very nice shirt today. I like your shirt very much. I was thinking earlier, what a nice shirt you're wearing.
Thanks. I bought it about 5 years ago. It just about still fits. It was much looser 5 years ago. This is the problem when you don't buy clothes. It's getting a bit tighter now.
Well, you've got to lose those Christmas kilos, mate. Food, I think I spend about 5% monthly on food.
I reckon I spend about 15% on food.
Wow.
Quite a lot.
That includes going out to restaurants and supermarket shopping.
Yeah, I'd say about 15%. It sounds a bit like I'm showing off now. To show off is aparentar or something, but I'm just being honest. I'm fussy about the food I buy.
And you eat good food as well.
I eat good food. I'm very fussy about what's in the food I eat. So I read labels. I look for good quality products, and you got to pay for them.
You enjoy eating out?
Yep. So I spend quite a high proportion of my personal income on food, I have to say.
Accommodation and household bills. I have a 15% because we have paid our mortgage. So we only have regular bills like gas, electric, cleaning the stairs, maintaining the building and the lift. So our accommodation bills are minimal. So that's 15% for us.
Oh, I envy Craig. He has paid off. That means he's paid back all of his mortgage. I'm still paying mine. Only another 10 years to go. Who's counting? So if we include mortgage, remember hipoteca, in that, I guess then my mortgage isn't too high. So the mortgage accounts for about 20%, I guess, of my income. And then with household bills, I suppose that's probably getting up to about 35% mortgage.
Okay, so keep track because 35 and the 15 on food is already 50%. So you've only got 50% left.
That
but
sounds about
49
right.
because you had 1% on clothes.
That sounds about right. Yep.
Transport for me is about 5%. I run a car. I have a car, so that's petrol, insurance, maintenance of the car, and then bus and train fares occasionally.
I would say about 2%. Although I do have half a car, which I share with someone.
Do you have the front or the back?
I get the boot. I'm in the boot. The maletero. I don't use it that much. Within the city, I nearly always travel around by bus or metro or bikes. So I don't spend that much on petrol. And it's not a very flashy car. Flashy is like impressive. It's a small car. It's pretty
economical,
cheap,
yeah.
Economical to run. So it doesn't cost about 2 or 3% on transport.
Okay, here's where I think I need to maybe cut down a bit. To cut down means to reduce. So holidays, I probably spend about 25% of my income, which is a bit too high, I think.
Well, I don't know exactly how much money Craig earns, but I will verify that Craig must spend quite a bit on holidays. I'm very jealous of the holidays he goes on. He always goes on fantastic holidays. But I'm jealous at the same time because he has a fantastic time, don't you?
Yeah, and I do enjoy going away and traveling. So that's kind of a hobby, and it also relaxes me and it also opens my mind. So I don't mind spending that money on it, although maybe it should be a bit less than 25%. Sport and fitness, 5% I have.
For me, about 0.5%, less than 1%. I did for 1 year join the cheapest gym in the whole of Valencia.
So you don't pay membership anymore?
No, that ran out and I haven't joined another one since. And fitness, about a year ago, I bought new training shoes that I haven't used yet, but they're still new. I haven't bought any shorts or any sports equipment. So, yeah, really less than 1%.
Medical care, will we have Social Security and health care paid for as we contribute to Social Security? So I don't have any medical insurance or private medical care, so 0 for me.
Same for me. Yep. It's all on the social security. Thank goodness.
Hobbies, and I've also grouped it together with IT because technology also is something that I'm interested in. Probably I spend 10% on things like technology, gadgets, devices, obviously podcasting. I buy things connected to podcasting for my own use because it's a hobby. So probably about 10%.
10%. For me, that makes you quite techie. 10% is quite a lot to be spending on.
Makes me poorer.
I think, yeah. But if Craig hadn't spent that money, we wouldn't be able to produce such good quality podcasts.
What would you say you spend on? I know eating out is a hobby of yours, or food is a hobby, so we've included that. But do you have other areas that you... music, perhaps?
Well, I would maybe put that in a separate category as entertainment. Yeah. So entertainment like music, concerts, theatre, going out.
So what would you give for that? 5% perhaps?
About 5%, yeah. But hobbies, virtually nothing. I'm very boring, I must say. I don't really have any hobbies. So virtually nothing on hobbies. IT, if we include that with hobbies, okay, about 0.5% or 1% a year. I mean, I'm on my second smartphone. It's only the second one I've ever had. And I've had that now for about 3 years. So you get an idea of how much I spend on technology.
Well, I always say, if it works, don't fix it. If you're doing this with us, perhaps you spend money on cosmetics and makeup and hair care. Well, for me, that will be, as a man, personal care, toiletries, haircuts, probably about 5%. Hygiene, personal hygiene.
Okay. So if we group it all together as personal hygiene, okay, that opens it up a bit, I guess, because cosmetics, you might think just things to make you look good. But if we include toiletries, things that are essential to be clean and presentable, then yeah, okay, because cosmetics, I guess, makeup and all that, 0. Although there are some men who spend money on that.
Yeah.
But for things like aftershave, things like razors, that type of thing. Yeah, electric.
And you pay for your haircuts, do you?
Yeah, I guess.
Really?
Yeah. So, yeah. I've been wrong. Craig's laughing. He's pointing at me saying, what, you paid for that? Somebody did that and you give them money? I know. If I ever catch them, I'm going to kill them.
You want to get a refund, mate. Savings. Now, this is an interesting area for me. I probably save because I'm 56 years old, so I'm already thinking maybe in a few years to semi-retire. I don't think I'll ever stop working voluntarily, but I'm probably trying to save about 10% of my income now for when I retire.
The rest you spend, yeah?
The rest is, so 10% of my income goes to helping my pension, which won't be very high. So now for a few years, I've been trying to top that up. To top something up means put extra inside to make it more. So my Spanish pension is not going to be very high when I do retire. So I'm trying to top it up with some from my income.
Is this the state pension or have you got a separate pension plan?
Both. I voluntarily top up my contributions to the state pension, and I'm also probably putting an extra 5% in the bank as savings.
Savings, but you don't actually have a private pension plan yet?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think the state pension plan in Spain is probably better than a private pension plan. That's what I've been told, but I don't really understand finance, to be honest.
No, and anyway, these things such as how state pensions are calculated, they change so frequently that it's hard to keep track of the latest conditions.
Probably by the time we retire, by the time means at the time or before, probably people will be retiring when they're 85. So who knows? Who knows if we'll even get a pension? So that's the reason, that's part of the reason why I'm putting money aside. I'm putting some extra money aside for when I get older in case I need it. Apart from these different areas, are there any other areas of your life that you allocate money to?
I can't think of any categories outside those that we've already mentioned. Can you?
I probably allocate about 10% to conferences and courses, online courses sometimes to learn things. I pay for that. That might include buying books that teach me things or going to conferences. I don't always get paid for traveling to conferences, but I do like to go to them. So that's probably another 10% of my income.
Okay, yeah, I'd forgotten about that. It's a very important category. Education, let's call it.
Self-improvement.
Yeah, self-improvement, education, whatever. For me, it depends on the year. There are years when I do courses, years I don't. But at the minute, I'm not doing anything. But let's say it probably averages about 3 or 4% for me per year. Because sometimes I've studied French, both online and going to a teacher. Yeah, about 3 or 4%, I would say. It's an important expenditure. You're right.
So this is a good exercise if you'd like to go to the show notes at episode 297 and do this for yourself. Just thinking about where your money is going every month might help you to refocus and maybe reallocate or redistribute your money to other areas to improve your personal finances. So do you budget your money? Where does your money go? And what would you like to spend more on? And what would you like to spend less on? We'd be very interested to hear. If you do have a comment on today's episode, send us a voice message to speakpipe.com. That's speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. Remember, you only have 90 seconds if you use that free service, or you could record a sound file and send it with an email. Reza, where should they send their emails?
Send your emails to craig@inglespodcast.com or me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
And we remind you that you can buy courses on the Mansion Ingles website. Go to store.mansioningles.net and have a look at the courses we have for sale for your English improvement. Thank you to all of you who are helping us by supporting this podcast via Patreon. You can see a list of all our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/Ingles podcast. Before we go, we'd like to welcome our new Patreon supporters who are joining us this month. They are Norman Foster, Richard Calavia, Joshu FZ, Nacho, and Carlos Davila.
Craig, what have we got on next week's episode?
On next week's episode, we'll be speaking about Mexico. I'm really looking forward to talking about Mexico with you next week, Reza, and we hope you'll join us for that episode. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.